Hi everyone, welcome to today's episode of Insight with Oladejo. My name is Oladejo Adeyemi and I remain your foremost business coach who designates it's time to reading the tax laws so that you don't have to spend as much time doing the same. Today, we want to consider a very interesting conversation. Many are times when people are considering the cost of non-compliance, their resolution is always that I would pay the penalty and the interest. In fact, I was in a conversation a couple of days ago, and the person within that gathering, whom I don't know, is conclusion was that if there was a tax offense, then the company should just be exposed to penalty and interest. So imagine that as a person or a company, there was an offense or there was a default, and you had paid the liability, you had paid the penalty, you had paid the interest. To you, that should be it. But the real question is, with the new tax reform that we have recently begun in Nigeria, is that really all? Does that solve the problem? Paying the liability, paying the penalty, and paying the interest. That is what we're going to be considering today. So, what does the law say? Section 139, subsection 2 of the Nigeria Tax Act reads verbatim that notwithstanding any administrative penalty or interest imposed under this act or another law, the relevant tax authority retains the power to prosecute a person for an offense specified under the act. If you follow that reading very carefully, when the provision starts with notwithstanding, you should adjust your glasses very well if you use one, because what it means is that the law is trying to draw your attention to something very important, and it's also sounding a note of warning. So if it says that notwithstanding any administrative penalty or interest imposed under the act, the relevant tax authority retains the power to prosecute a person for an offense specified under the act. So if I go back to the initial statement and you see the scenario I explained, which I experienced, will that person actually be correct? Was that person correct? Administratively, you may have paid the penalty, you may have fulfilled the administrative penalty and interest attributable to that offense in the law. But if that offense is an offense the basis of which you can be prosecuted, this provision right here gives the tax authorities the power to be able to prosecute. So let's take a deeper dive even as we go on. The important thing, however, here to note is that it does not mean that every tax mistake, so that you don't fall into that assumption that every tax mistake, becomes a criminal case upon which an entity or a person can be prosecuted. The law actually says that for an offense specified under the relevant provision of this act, what that means right there is that that issue must have been specified as an offense, right, under which the prosecution, can be based. If that negligence, non-compliance has not been specified as an offense, then the provision of this particular subsection will not apply. There are some misgivings or some mistakes that would happen typically that will not constitute an offense under the tax law. Then you may just want to ask, what will be an offense? A very classical one that I can think of, right now is where you've deducted withholding tax, for instance, right, and you have not remitted. That's an offense. The law specifies that kind of offense. Now, where you've paid the tax, you've paid the penalty, you've paid the interest, attributable to that non-compliance, you need to bear in mind that for such an offense, the tax authority still reserves the power to be able to prosecute. The tax penalty should not become the price of deliberate non-compliance. This is a very important note, to take, because most times business owners will say, well, I will do this, and I will not, I would wait for the penalty to be raised. In the days where we didn't have the tax reforms with us, you may be correct. But in the days that we are now, the absolute price of non-compliance is no longer the tax, the penalty, and the interest. Depending on the nature of the non-compliance, whether it constitutes an offense upon which you can be constituted or you can be prosecuted, the tax authority reserves the right to proceed with prosecution. And the law becomes very explicit because it also states who can prosecute, in the earlier subsection ahead of that section, and just giving proper frame to what the intent of the law, is in that particular regard. The big compliance lesson here is that what you would ordinarily have reacted to by saying, how much is the penalty? How much is the penalty is no longer sufficient for you as a consideration being a business owner. You should also be concerned about the fact that could this be an offense upon which we can be prosecuted because of this, the existence of this provision, because this provision harms the relevant tax authority with that right to be able to say, even though you have paid the tax, you have paid the interest, you have paid the penalty attributable to these non-compliance, we still want to pursue prosecution with you. And you need to understand that upon prosecution, many things, could actually happen, because administrative penalty, would relate to the penalty and the interest. But when you talk about um, um, formal prosecution, it could result into payment of fine, it could result in going to prison, imprisonment, and it could even be both in extreme circumstances, especially where the law specifies, that kind of outcome. So the big lesson here again, like I mentioned, is that you can no longer just stop at saying how much is the penalty. You also have to ask yourself, is the offense constitutes an offense under which you can be prosecuted. Under the Nigerian tax regime, what is important is that paying penalty may settle the money, but it may not settle the offense. The tax authority now has the right, based on this subsection, to proceed to prosecution, notwithstanding your settlement of the tax not paid, the penalty thereof, and the interest attributable to it. I hope this helps you to keep better business accounts and to take better management decision as you continue in your journey and continue in doing your business, as you attend to your customers, as you take those decisions, as you deduct and you're not remitting. I hope you continue to bear this in mind, that things have changed and they have changed quite significantly. Don't forget to keep subscribing, liking, sharing, continue to do your part as I'm trying to do mine, so that we continue to educate the business environment within which we operate in Nigeria. I will definitely see you on the next one. I remain Oladejo Adeyemi, your foremost business coach, who designates his time to reading the tax law so that you don't have to spend as much time doing the same. Bye for now.